What incident of the 1962 Indo-Sino, India-China war shocked the Chinese soldiers? Major Shaitan Singh only with 120 men fearlessly defeated the 1300 Chinese and saved Ladakh in 1962. The Sino-Indian War of 1962 goes down in our history books as nothing more than India's disastrous defeat to the Chinese. However, there was one bright spot for the country during the war, which is still remembered as the greatest last stand ever taken by any battalion in the country's history. We are talking about the Battle of Razang La that took place on November 18, 1962. Led by Major Shaitan Singh Bhatti, 120 Jawans of the Charlie Company of the 13th Kumaon Battalion fought and killed nearly 1300 Chinese men and successfully pushed back the enemy troops after a hard-fought battle. The Charlie Company of the 13th Kumaon Battalion was protecting the airfield in Chushul, which was important if India had to hold on to Ladakh when the Chinese troops attacked the area on the morning of November 18, 1962. It was a group of more than 5,000 Chinese soldiers holding position against 120 Indian soldiers. What followed was heavy firing from both the sides. Unlike the Indian soldiers, the Chinese were loaded with heavy artillery support, but the Indian soldiers knew that there was no going back. They decided to fight the enemies with their bare hands when their ammunition finished and killed nearly 1300 Chinese soldiers. And all of this was done under the fearless supervision of Major Shaitan Singh. Out of these 120 bravos, 114 were martyred, 5 were taken as prisoners of war, POW, by the Chinese, but they later escaped, and 1 was sent back by the major, so that he could narrate the story of their heroic stand to the world. Singh was among the 114 martyred Indian soldiers. He was wounded by a sniping Chinese MMG when he was fearlessly moving from one platoon to another, passing his commands and encouragements to his troops. He continued to fight with his fellowmen, which was followed by a heavy machine gun fire from the Chinese. In order to keep him safe from the Chinese army, one of his fellowmen tied Singh's wounded body to himself and rolled down the hill and placed him between boulders where he died. Singh's body was found frozen, still gripping his weapon, in February 1963 at the same place he was positioned by his comrade. All this happened at a height of 16,000 feet in the freezing cold against the heavy attack from the enemy. But the Charlie Company of the 13th Kumaon Battalion didn't give up. For every man lost by us, the enemy lost 4 to 5. And it's commendable. It is no hidden fact that India's defeat in the 1962 war was tragic, but the sacrifice of Major Shaitan Singh and his men will always be remembered for their supreme courage and devotion towards their duty. Major Shaitan Singh was awarded the Paramveer Chakra posthumously for his unprecedented leadership, courage, and determination, with 5 V Chakras and 4 Sena medals that were awarded to his fellow army men. How can a man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and temples of gods? Major Shaitan Singh Bhatti was from Jodhpur, Rajasthan, a hero. India never suspected that China would ever launch an attack, but it did. India was attacked on October 20, 1962 in what famously came to be known as Sino-India War of 1962. The belief of not ever being attacked by China did not let the Indian army prepare, and the result was the standoff between 10,000 to 20,000 Indian troops and 80,000 Chinese troops. The war continued for about a month and ended on November 21 after China declared a ceasefire. On the anniversary of the end of Sino-Indian War, let us take you through a timeline regarding how the war began and all that took place during its course. How did it start? With the independence of the Republic of India and the formation of the People's Republic of China, PRC, in the year 1949. One of the policies for the Indian government was that of maintaining cordial relations with China. When China announced that it would be occupying Tibet, India sent a letter of protest proposing negotiations on the Tibet issue. China was even more active in deploying troops on the Akshayan border than any other Indian republic was. India was so concerned about its relations with China that it did not even attend a conference for the conclusion of a peace treaty with Japan because China was not invited. India even strove to become China's representative in matters related to world, since China had been isolated from many issues. In 1954, China and India concluded the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, under which India acknowledged Chinese rule in Tibet. It was at this time when former Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru, promoted the slogan Hindi-Chini bhai-bhai. In July 1954, Nehru wrote a memo directing a revision in the maps of India to show definite boundaries on all frontiers. However, Chinese maps showed some 120,000 square kilometers of Indian territory as Chinese. On being questioned, Zhou Enlai, the first premier of People's Republic of China, responded that there were errors in the maps. Top People's Republic of China leader, Mao Zedong, felt humiliated by the reception Dalai Lama obtained in India when he fled there in March 1959. Tensions increased between the two nations when Mao stated that the Lhasa rebellion in Tibet was caused by Indians. China's perception of India as a threat to its rule of Tibet became one of the most prominent reasons for the Sino-Indian War. Various conflicts and military incidents between India and China flared up throughout the summer of 1962. On July 10, 1962, around 350 Chinese troops surrounded an Indian post at Chushul and used loudspeakers to convince the Gurkhas that they should not be fighting for India. In October 1959, India realized that it was not ready for war after a clash between the two armies at Kanka Pass, in which 9 Indian policemen were killed. The country assumed responsibility for the border and pulled back patrols from disputed areas. Facts on the Indo-China War. On October 20, 1962, China's People's Liberation Army invaded India in Ladakh and across the Mark-Malone line in the then Northeast Frontier Agency. Till the start of the war, the Indian side was confident that war would not be started and made little preparations. Thinking this, India deployed only 2 divisions of troops in the region of the conflict, while the Chinese troops had 3 regiments positioned. The Chinese also cut Indian telephone lines, preventing the defenders from making contact with their headquarters. On the first day, the Chinese infantry also launched an attack from the rear. The continued losses forced the Indian troops to escape to Bhutan. On October 22nd, the Chinese lighted a bush which caused a lot of confusion among the Indians. Some 400 Chinese troops attacked the Indian position. The initial Chinese assault was stopped by accurate Indian mortar fire. When the Indian army discovered that a Chinese force gathered in a pass, it opened fire with mortars and machine guns and killed about 200 Chinese soldiers. On October 26th, a patrol from the 4th Sikhs was encircled, and after they were unable to break the encirclement, an Indian unit sneaked in and attacked the Chinese army and freed the Sikhs. According to China's official military history, the war achieved China's policy objectives of securing borders in its western sector